the Midwest has a way of bringing cloud cover just often enough throughout the winter to keep you doused in a blanket of melancholy that you can't seem to take off until the sun shines upon your face. And so on a sunny spring day, you take an adventure, throwing on your boots and grabbing some snacks, determined to hit the trail. As you walk along at your own pace, you see others, ahead of you, behind you, smiling, laughing, enjoying the sun and warmth. You look down at the trail to step over some roots and rocks, and when you look up again, those ahead of you are gone. It causes you to pause, the laughter that rolled from them now silent. An eerie feeling crawls over your skin as you turn to see the man behind you. But instead, the trail is empty. As your skin prickles and your mind reels to process what you are seeing, you suddenly realize how easy it is for the forest to swallow you whole. For there are men and women and children who walk into the forest and are never seen again. Welcome back to Tragedy with a View. I am your host, Kayla, and this is another free Solo Friday episode to keep you company until next week, where I'll have a co-host with me again. In case you are not someone who follows us on social media, pre-orders for merchandise is now live. There are 4 new designs that you can grab, 2 of which are t-shirts and 2 are crew neck sweatshirts. The pre-sale will end on the 16th, which is in 1 week, and I am not going to be keeping stock in these items, so you won't be able to get them again for the foreseeable future. I also want to mention that I've got a little bit of a new format for exclusive episodes, because you can now subscribe and get additional content through Patreon, Apple, and Spotify now. So because of that, I am going to start rolling out the exclusive episodes in the same format as normal episodes. So they'll be coming out on Wednesdays as well. It's just going to be the first Wednesday of every month is going to be the exclusive content. So if you are not a member of the $4 tier on Patreon or subscribed through Apple subscriptions or Spotify, you won't have access to those episodes. If you are on an app outside of Patreon, Apple, or Spotify, you may kind of see a little bit of the number discrepancy. So, for example, the most recent exclusive episode was number 44, and so you'll probably see 43 and 45. So if you see a single missing episode and it lands on the first Wednesday of the month, that's why you're seeing that, is because whatever app you're listening on doesn't have a paid subscription option, and so those episodes will not be available there. To kind of backtrack a little bit there then too, I do have a $1 subscription tier on Patreon who they have access to the first 4 exclusive episodes. Now that I'm rolling out the exclusive content with the normal content, if you want to continue getting the exclusive episodes, $1 tier members, you are going to need to upgrade to the $4 tier. If you are someone who just wants to support the podcast in a small way, the $1 tier is a great option. You also get a free pack of stickers, and then you also get access to those episodes a day early. So there's still perks to the $1 tier, just not going to continue with getting paid content moving forward. Now, with that out of the way, I recorded this episode prior to Hurricane Helene even making it to the coast, so I'm adding this in after because we are talking about an area that was affected by Hurricane Helene. From what I understand, a lot of people are being affected in eastern Tennessee, western North Carolina, and Georgia, and I believe Virginia as well, I've heard, are all in some capacity a state of emergency, and many trails within the Great Smoky Mountains National Park are impassable, and I believe some of the Appalachian Trail is even being affected. And I know that the damage is not isolated to these locations and that many other areas and states are seeing the flooding and destruction as I know a lot of people have lost their lives. But in this episode today, we are talking about the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, which has been affected, and it's why I'm stating things the way that I am. I know that parts of the park are closed indefinitely, which parks and uninhabited areas are one thing, communities and living space is another, and it's another reminder that in devastation comes the opportunity to be helpful and do good. And while I wish that this had never happened in the first place, I hope that all of my listeners that are in this area are safe as they can be and that their families are well and find a way to help, and that you have steps available to someday return to normal. I don't suspect that that's going to be a fast process, but I still want you to know that if you are being affected by the hurricane, you've been in my thoughts the last couple of weeks. And I know that thoughts don't do much. And if anyone's feeling inclined, money is often a really good source to assist in natural disasters. And you can donate to some of the larger names such as Red Cross, United Way. There's also Greater Good, Responsible Stewardship. Or you can go more specific to locations such as the Community Foundation of Western North Carolina. There's the Neighbor to Neighbor Disaster Relief Fund operated through Eastern Tennessee Foundation. And then if you are a ginormous animal lover like me, the IFAW Disaster Response Team specifically helps animals in disaster locations. I urge you to, give what you can if that's something you're called to do. Don't put yourself in financial straits to assist here. And if you are in this area, take some time to visit and see what you can do to physically help and just boost morale and be there during a really devastating time. On the border between North Carolina and Tennessee lies a mountain range that layers ridge on ridge with beauty and serenity. The Great Smoky Mountains National Park is home to a huge population of plants and animals. The park was established in June of 1934 and aims to preserve the Southern Appalachian history. This park is the #1 most visited park in the United States. Inside the park, there is a section of the Blue Ridge Mountains, which is part of the Appalachian Mountain chain, and this also includes some of the highest peaks on the eastern North American continent. These peaks include Kawohe, which just had its name reestablished, Mount Gayo, and Mount LeConte. All of these mountains are over 6,500 feet in elevation, or 1,980 meters. Along with the mountain range, part of the Appalachian Trail runs through the park, nearly right down the middle, as through hikers will make their way from Georgia to Maine or vice versa, Maine to Georgia. Nearly 3,000 people attempt to through hike each year, with only about a quarter completing the distance. But nearly 3 million people each year step onto the Appalachian Trail to hike for some distance. The park is known for being huge and dense and having a large variety of activities for the entire family to enjoy. From hiking to whitewater rafting, climbing to the peaks of the mountains or scaling the rock walls, horseback riding and camping, there is something here for everyone. Newfound Gap is a mountain pass that is located almost in the center of the park, and in fact, the state line between Tennessee and North Carolina actually crosses this gap at Newfound Gap Road. The pass is roughly 5,048 feet or 1,539 meters in elevation, and while there are multiple hiking trails that will lead you to this point and over the pass, the Appalachian Trail is another popular option. Partially because of all of the options for activities that people have in the park, and partially because of the Appalachian Trail allowing through hikers access, the number of visitors in this park is astronomical. In 2020, it had over 14 million visitors, and that number hasn't really changed that much, with just shy of 14 million visitors coming through the gates in 2023. But of course, with this many visitors, it is impossible to ignore the fact that you will also have more frequent cases of death and disappearances. In actuality, search and rescue averages over 100 activities per year. While I could not find an exact number, it appears that there are 5 cases of people who have gone missing in the Smoky Mountains and have never been seen again. However, that list did not have the following case listed, so I'm not sure if it's up to date or if it's just inaccurate. Derek Luking was 23 years old and known to be dependable, hardworking, and had great time management skills. Derek had a huge heart and went overseas for mission trips multiple times while he was working his way to receiving his degree from Johnson University, which was formerly known as Johnson Bible College. From here, Derek began working as an orderly at Peninsula Behavioral Health. For those who don't know, orderlies assist nurses in medical settings and also help to comfort patients. From everything that I've seen about this specific location, the job is extremely hard because you are dealing with behavioral issues, which means that the job is extremely stressful and often takes a toll on the people working there. Ryan Molden, Derek's roommate, woke up one morning to go to work where he and Derek worked together, and he realized that Derek's alarm was going off. At first, he didn't think much of it because Derek had a habit of waking up and leaving before his alarm would go off. But once he got to work, he realized something was wrong. Derek just simply wasn't there. While at first Ryan kind of let this sit and decided that he wasn't going to panic, he would end up calling Derek's family and speaking to Derek's dad, Tim. Derek's family lived in Virginia, and as soon as they realized that Derek was missing, they drove through the night to Tennessee. In the meantime, Ryan checked Derek's computer and found that he had been searching the Great Smoky Mountains and had booked a hotel in Cherokee, North Carolina. They also learned that Derek had visited a Bass Pro Shops before heading to the hotel, where he purchased $1,000 worth of new items, including a sleeping bag, a tent, survival supplies, a map, compass, knife, headlamp, fire starter, and a survival manual. It really seemed like he was going to attempt to recreate his own version of Bear Grylls' show, Man vs. Wild. But while Derek was already a knowledgeable camper, he didn't have any survival or backcountry experience or skills. Armed with this information, Derek's family went to the hotel and found video footage of Derek checking in. With the police assistance, they entered the room and found that there was a Bible on the bed and a bottle of liquor on the floor, almost like he had just left. Normally, this would have been odd. The Bible was expected, but Derek didn't start drinking until earlier that year. Tim, Derek's dad, had spoken with his son on multiple occasions about how Derek was really unhappy with his life. He didn't like his job and he wasn't feeling fulfilled with where he was. To cope with his displeasure, Derek had begun drinking and smoking cigarettes. But nothing else was out of place. The videos show that Derek was leaving the hotel in Cherokee on March 3rd, 2012 at 4 a.m. But no one has seen Derek since. When his family went to search the trails, they happened to find his car at about 8:30 a.m. He drove a white Ford Escape that was found parked in the lower lot at Newfound Gap at the state line. This might imply that he went towards the Newfound Gap Pass, but it is hard to tell what direction he went once he left his vehicle. But inside his vehicle would tell a slightly different version of the story. Inside the Escape was Derek's keys, wallet, and nearly all of his newly purchased hiking equipment, including the survival items, food, the new tent, and sleeping bag. And most chilling of all was a note in Derek's handwriting that said, "Don't come find me." On March 17th, 5 days after he was last seen, Derek was officially declared missing. Search and rescue, trail runners, volunteers, his family, and his friends all showed up to do everything they could to find Derek. Investigators began to ask if Derek had indicated that he was contemplating taking his own life. And while most people would have said no, Tim wasn't so sure. As days turned into weeks, Derek's family became more and more aware that Derek might not be alive, but they held on to hope. Rangers would interview campers and hikers in the area, and family members would hand out thousands of flyers to anyone they saw. Despite talking to many families that had been in the area for days, no one recognized Derek's picture. This led authorities to believe that he likely stepped out onto the trail and then disappeared off trail as soon as he found a spot to press through the foliage. And I want to throw in a real quick note here that unless you've been off trail before and looking for the trail under certain circumstances, the trail can be very difficult to find even when it's a dozen feet from you. Sam and I just recently had this happen when we ended up off trail, and we were kind of walking around some boulders and cliff ledges, and we found some rock climbers and asked them if they knew where the trail was. And one of them told us, just walk in this direction. It's a little ways away. And I kid you not, 10 steps later, we were on the trail. So I guess my point is that going off trail when you don't know where you're going is really potentially a deadly choice. 60 people were assigned to the search to look for Derek, along with 3 dog teams from Tennessee Department of Correction officers. These numbers are not including volunteers, and all of these people would search 175 miles of trails surrounding the Newfound Gap parking lots and passing out 3,000 flyers. This still turned up no clues to Derek's whereabouts, and it wasn't until after rappelling down high cliffs on March 29th that the search began to be pulled back. Today, the family still praises the efforts of the rangers, park employees, volunteers, and trail runners in the efforts to find Derek. To complicate matters, search and rescue wasn't able to focus on Derek's disappearance alone. The day after Derek was labeled as a missing person, Sunday, March 18th, Michael Giovanni Concini was reported missing after his car was found abandoned on the side of the road about 1 mile or 2/3 of a kilometer away from the Newfound Gap parking lot that Derek's car was found in. Michael was also 23 years old, and after rangers saw his car parked in an area that didn't really have a reason for any overnight camping or hiking, they investigated and found that Michael was missing. He was described as being 6 feet tall and 160 pounds. He was not a hiker or an outdoorsman, so immediately rangers were concerned about what the motivation was for Michael to leave his car here. As rangers searched for both Derek and Michael, they would use helicopters 3 different days, as well as 1 night flight to assist with using night vision, which, of course, is more effective in the dark. But on August 21st, 5 months later, some items would be spotted by a group of park employees who were in the area for a field study. They called into the rangers, letting them know what they had found, and when the rangers got there to investigate, they found human remains and skull fragments just over 1/4 of a mile or half a kilometer from where Michael's car was found. The Sevier County Medical Examiner, Knoxville Regional Forensic Center, and Knoxville County Sheriff's Forensic Unit all got involved in this discovery. On September 6th, it was confirmed through dental records that the remains found belonged to Michael Giovanni Concini, and while they couldn't pinpoint the exact form of death, they feel confident that Michael took his own life. This is partially based on the items that they found with his body, but they don't identify specifically what this item or items are. Derek was last seen wearing black track pants, white tennis shoes, a Realtree camouflage rain jacket, and potentially had a small, dark pack with him. Derek stands 5'11" or 180 centimeters tall and weighed about 220 pounds at the time of his disappearance. He has green eyes, brown hair, and often wore a short beard. He wore prescription eyeglasses while driving and had a Japanese tattoo character on his chest that means life or live. If anybody knows anything or has any information that could lead to the whereabouts of Derek, investigative services can be contacted through the national park at 888-653-0009. As always, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this short episode. Join us next week. I'm going to have a new voice on the podcast. Be sure to check out merch and have a great rest of your week. What is life without close calls with disaster? Thank you for listening. Don't forget to follow the podcast to be the first to hear the now weekly episodes. Join our subscription on Patreon, Apple, or Spotify today and immerse yourself in the haunting beauty of the great outdoors. For around $4 a month, you'll get exclusive access to the first episode of each month and early access to all other episodes, showcasing the morbid and mysterious side of nature. Please reach out with story requests, and if you have your own story, please email tragedywithaview@gmail.com for a chance to have your story featured on a later episode. Again, thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.